Hello, everybody. This is the Hidden Hollywood Satanic Symbols in Movies After Show. And we are going to be streaming live from the Non Sequitur Show Discord server. The invite is in the description. And I would also like to name this the What the Fuck Did I Just Listen To stream. Because I honestly don't know what the hell that guy was trying to say. Anyhow, we will go on from here and go on to the Discord. So, without further ado.
Tomorrow, guess who we got, though? Guess who we got tomorrow?
Who?
And we're back.
Nightmare Fuel.
And we're live.
Yep.
Awesome.
I've always been a fan of the censorship because it pulls the wool over your eyes.
Wait, who's on tomorrow? What I missed there?
We got Nightmare Fuel tomorrow.
Oh shit, Reese! God damn it! All right, have
Is
fun.
Kyle coming in?
All right, he might.
All right. Well, that was
Anarchy,
quite
your
a
question.
fucking show.
Oh, my question. Oh, okay. So I was actually in a debate. Actually, I would probably say it was more of a shouting match, but and he kept on bringing up the something from nothing part of it,
Talk to me.
and
You get me excited.
And I said to him, "All right, you claim that some god, I believe this person was Christian, some god created the universe. Where did he get the material to create the universe, or was that also from nothing?" So kind of negated his argument, and he went off with the STFUs and.
Yeah, I see a little bit of conflation going on here.
Well,
When
the way that they keep.
What's the core
Go
of the question?
What's the core? Yeah,
The core of the question was, how can you believe that something came from nothing?
Sorry, what's the core of your question?
Oh, mine? Well, no, I was just. I was just asking an opinion.
Is the theist positing something from philosophical nothing?
Yeah,
No.
I mean, you'd have to define what nothing is first and demonstrate
Yeah.
that a nothing can exist or not exist.
I want to know what the theist claim is first, though.
Well,
what is the theist actually saying?
his claim is, as an evolutionist, I believe that something came from nothing, hence the Big Bang.
Say that, though.
And I also told him, all right, I don't know a single evolutionist or Big Bang theorist or somebody that believes in that it came from nothing. So obviously your argument is nonsensical in that respect alone, but to pose back to you.
Oh, wait, Alan Guth called inflation the biggest free lunch ever. Like, because basically the claim is that there's still zero mass and there's still zero energy in the universe collectively. Which
In the universe, which is the case because the universe is locally flat. But hang on, that's a side topic. Hey, I'm trying. Let's not go down a tangent because I'm kind of curious here. So,
Yeah.
The theist is positing, or he's saying that evolution and Big Bang. He's talking about philosophical nothing or ex nihilo, which clearly neither of those things have anything to do with. Right? Big Bang does not claim something from ex nihilo. Nothing, right? They do claim scientific nothing because it's quantum. It's what's called quantum fluctuations or a metastable false vacuum. But you have to clarify what he means by it.
Oh, he meant by as in there is nothing existing. I actually did try to get him to clarify on that. He said there was nothing there.
Logical from something from coming from nothing. There's no logical proof that shows it is a contradiction from something from nothing. It's not there. So to say that it is not possible, you have to demonstrate that using reductio ad absurdum. I've had only one person that I've ever seen try. I took his proof and ran it by a few different people. We analyzed it, and there were some flaws with it, but at least it was a good effort. But I don't think it's logically impossible that something can not come from nothing. I don't think we have a way of knowing one way or another, right? It's nothing. We don't know what the properties of nothing. We don't know what the actualities are. We don't know what the potentialities are. We don't know what any modal thing with nothing.
I mean, we can't know the properties of nothing because as soon as nothing has a property, it's no longer nothing.
It's called a hypostantiation problem or a reification fallacy. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, all I posited was the hypocrisy in the theological creation of something from nothing, and he was saying the something from nothing as well. He was saying, "Oh, you believe in
he's
something
wrong.
from nothing?" Well,
I mean,
know that,
I
but-
don't think
Wrong.
I don't think that nothing can exist in an absolute sense, because the moment you have nothing and posit that something can come from it, the property that something can come from it is attached to it, and it's no longer a nothing anymore.
Doubtful. Nothing can exist. I mean, the closest I can come is where were you before you were born? Well, that was a state of nothing, right? I mean, but that's the closest my mind can wrap my head around what nothing would be. But yeah, you can't. Don't let a person conflate like that. Look, if a theist says you believe something comes from nothing, ask them how they know what you believe and where they get that idea from, because obviously evolution and Big Bang do not stipulate anything of the sort. So they're just prima facie wrong.
Well, no, I know that, but he was steadfast that we believe that.
And the
People
only
think
reason
that evolution says you come from a rock. People are stupid. What do you want?
No, exactly. And actually another interesting one, and I actually had to leave the conversation a little bit at this point. They said, "How does a chicken give birth to a fox?" And I was like, I can't do this right now.
Yeah, at that point,
So-
I'm telling you, at that level of stupidity, you just move on. You say, you know what, have a cookie, pat him on the head. And then go
I mean,
Pretty much.
sometimes-
Pretty much.
That sounds
No,
like
that's when
Sometimes
you
you
troll
feel-
them and gave them a very convoluted explanation of
It's
how exactly a chicken would give birth to a fox.
that sounds
Well,
Sometimes you feel
or-
attached to the person making the argument, but sometimes you also are in a situation, for example, like I was with Victor the other night, where I've agreed to have this discussion, and I can't. It wouldn't be cool to just simply go, "All right, I'm out at this point because this is dumb." So what I did with Victor was I then explored other scientific ideas he had. For example, I already knew that he thought that the floaters you see in your eyes are literally germs on the top of the lens of your eyes that you're observing. And so I went down that
No.
rabbit hole with him, and I revealed multiple things that he has a fundamental misunderstanding of science on, and went, why should I accept your representation of our model, which we're saying is wrong, when you can't get other basic scientific concepts correct? So
Exactly.
that was my go-to.
Well,
Hey,
let me.
I actually, I'm like you. I have also have problems in my vitreous, in my eyes. I have a floater that's been driving me fucking crazy for a very long
I
time.
got
I
a
want to.
They're the
But
worst.
what happens is your brain actually processes them out after a certain time until you look at a bright blue sky, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, God, because they're annoying. They really are. But they're basically just parts of your retina that have come off.
Yeah, they can be blood vessels
Or
sometimes.
I thought it
Sometimes
was the
random
vitreous
debris.
humor solidifying.
There are
Well, it
multiple
could be-
things
some of
that
it could be-
can be the floaters.
But they're
Well,
not. You're not seeing germs.
Well, let me
Oh,
ask you this, atheist.
When a humor
what pulls the
solidifies,
next
does it make
Kleenex out
a
of the
good joke?
box?
That's the real.
People at once. What?
What? If there is no God, what pulls the next Kleenex that comes out of the box?
Correction.
It's pretty big.
Checkmate.
Yeah. That's the paradox of the
Ooh.
Kleenex. Yeah.
Shit, we lost.
Hey,
We lost.
So,
hey.
So, Steve, I just wanted to point something out. During the live chat, I typed in a question, which the autocorrect on my tablet's stupid fucking typing feature turned Mark Phillips into Mark Hamill for some reason. But the reason I'd asked that question is within. I know.
I'm wondering what the person the question was, but I was like, okay, you asked this, so I really want to answer because
Was
I
that
know.
what
I
it
tried to
was?
correct
I
it.
was
I
like-
tried to correct it, but you didn't see the correction, and it's okay.
no.
But the reason I asked it is because within I don't know this guy. I haven't read his book. I know nothing about him. Within about 10 minutes of the conversation, I said, "I figure I have you pegged." And there's a couple who is Kathy O'Brien, who was friends with Roseanne Barr. They went on a tour called Transformations of America back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they wrote some books and did a bunch of things through Granada Forum back in the early 80s. And Mark Phillips had claimed to be ex-CIA of some form, and he deprogrammed Kathy O'Brien, who claimed to be a victim of Project Monarch and MK Ultra, and said that she was a sex slave for Hillary Clinton, and that George Bush had holograms to make him look like a lizard, part of brainwashing sessions in the White, like really fucking batshit crazy stuff. And
Wow.
so I had him pegged just by the way he was explaining his arguments and the dodgy way that he was presenting everything so similarly to the same approach that these guys had. I said, I wonder if these guys are connected. And what did he say immediately? Oh, my wife's good friends with her. Like, so there was a reason for the question, but that's the reason. Just look into Kathy
It makes a
O'Brien.
little more sense now because like I didn't know what the hell the thing with Mark Hamill had to do with it, but whatever.
No, I meant Mark
Like,
Phillips,
oh,
and
look at
the tablet just filled in the fucking blank. But yeah, no, they were a big proponent of the satanic panic back in the day, saying that there was huge underground satanic sex cults in schools and whatnot, kidnapping children and running them on underground.
I don't remember any of those sex cults. I feel like I was left out.
I think,
Yeah, right?
What was wrong with
Did you want to be involved?
Symbolism.
All right, sure.
Symbolism.
I want to
You
at
were
least
looking
be
at
asked.
Symbolism.
I do have to
Exactly.
Steve, you were just too damn attractive to fit into the sex cult, and they didn't want to make all the other slaves jealous. That's all.
I have
Just-
to tip my hat
I
to
don't think
Jay.
they do ask.
I have to tip my hat to
I used to
Jay,
come-
though. I have to tip my hat to Jay. Coming off
It's
with
the
Mark
beard.
Mark,
It's the beard.
Mark Hamill was an incel was fucking brilliant.
Oh yeah, that was
a good
that was a
response,
pretty
very
good
good response.
report. I did laugh at that. I was sitting there going, "Damn." No, but yeah, no, it was Mark Phillips.
Because he never molested me. I'm like, didn't you love me? I mean, didn't you love me, Daddy? What's wrong? Was I just not attractive enough to you? What?
Had you grown your hair out yet?
Jesus, that gets into like Freudian psychology.
It really does.
Tell me about your mother.
Don't touch me all the time. But that.
But yeah, this is what I wanted to point out to you, Mr. Atheist, too, is that if you want to see where probably a lot of this guy's ideas are coming from, I'm going to point you, just by the way he was talking, to Mark Phillips, Kathy O'Brien, and probably, I'm going to almost guarantee he's one of these people who's read the Illuminati Formula, Path to Creating a Total Mind Control Slave, or whatever it was called. It was written by Fritz Springmeier back in the I think that was in the 80s as well, maybe 90s. That was co-authored with Cisco Wheeler. I'm going to almost guarantee he's on that bandwagon.
I'm afraid I was as bored of the topic before the discussion with him as I was at the end.
You said
Yeah,
a little
It's just not a
before.
topic that really
You were
I
engaged.
I can't get. I thought I would hit the moment during the discussion where I'd become passionately excited about it, and it really just if take a hard stance and then we got a conversation. But the
Oh,
topic
man.
in and of itself,
I
is
should have
boring.
been in there. I would have jumped right into it. As
look
I
at-
know, I think I know where like I have an interest in sort of the psychology behind things and all that in general. And I mean, the assumptions that he's making, that he's injecting a lot of meaning in things, and just sort of precluding the idea that, hey, maybe people are just throwing pop culture references in movies because they're pop culture references, and some person that's designing a set or something says, hey, that'll be cool.
Yeah, he's turning the mundane into sensational, which
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
they'll
bores
put
me.
in like cultist or Christian or whatever motifs to use them as motifs and themes. And maybe there's a message at the end of it, but it doesn't really amount to Hollywood as a cult.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Every movie has a
mind
different
control.
message.
Like,
In his defense,
What
though,
they're really,
he
I
did.
don't know what the end game is. Somebody had to ask, is he trying to lead people away from God or something like that? It's
I'll
like,
tell you what the fucking end game of subliminal messaging is. It's to sell Nikes. And
are you asking? Are you
Don't
asking
forget
about?
Adidas. Don't
Steve, are you
forget
asking what
Adidas.
his end game is?
It's for all the people the known people to steal our underwear and gain profit. That's what it is.
Oh, so it's Hanes.
He
Okay.
did make the point that symbols
Not our holy
have
underwear.
multiple
Wait
interpretations.
till we
Holy
get our
underwear.
Hanes on you.
I just walked over. I just all
Your
walked
ho-
over Shiva.
Get your
See,
holy Hanes here.
Perks if you have temple garments.
I don't.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about.
Some of the things mentioned with the films, maybe it's just the Easter egg effect. Because I remember watching this one documentary with talking about Steven Spielberg and the Star Wars, and there was a certain director he was a huge fan of who wrote a movie, and there was a number associated with it. And in the Star Wars movies, he would pepper that number throughout the various scenes. I don't remember what the number was. Maybe someone here does, but it's like an Easter egg. You know, it's not really so much for a certain agenda. It's just to like a little tip of the hat to people who are in the know who would catch the reference.
I think those things are cool. And look, I didn't get a chance to bring it up, and I wish I would have. But look, some of my favorite groups were like Black Sabbath and Ozzy, and I even like some Slayer songs. But I know,
oh yeah,
people give shit about Satanism, right? I mean, these were all marketing, publicity, sensationalism. I understand that, and I wanted to ask him if he actually thought that those groups, knowing that they were sensationalized, knowing that they've even come out and said this was all bullshit. Which is fine. I don't mind that because, you know, I love those groups and I didn't ever think they were, you know, it really into the occult, but they like the motif. I did too growing up. But I wonder if he actually thinks that they're actually serious kind of thing.
Well, I mean, we all know that the Beatles put hidden things in their music and in their cover art and shit, but it wasn't like they had a giant conspiracy going on to hide anything other than the real Paul McCartney died years ago.
Steve Hartley worships Satan every day.
Steve, by the way, is there ever going to be a debate with the proposition the Beatles were overrated? Because if so, I could find some energy for that.
Wow.
Ooh, shots fired.
Ooh, shots across the bow.
Beatles were underrated.
I used to take that position.
I'm going to say this, but I'm going to get my ass kicked. I look at Beatles for what they were, brilliant, but I'm never been a big fan of the Beatles. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Steve, you didn't say they were bad.
The thing that you have to look at with the Beatles are the things that they did as firsts. They actually did a lot for the recording industry. They did a lot to advance technology. They developed a lot of techniques that didn't exist prior to them, and they were very creative in doing so. Now, they were definitely poppy and kitschy.
They
Wait,
did
Shannon's
the beginning techno music too in a very significant way.
Shannon's having difficulty speaking, which is unusual for her, because we all know how much she likes to talk a lot.
Come on in, Shannon.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
Yes,
Yay.
you're here.
Oh,
doing,
you
Shannon?
can hear me.
Shannon!
Welcome, fellow Halifax Heligonian.
Shannon
Yeah.
is
They weren't pop after Rubber Soul.
Shannon is my favorite person in the entire atheist YouTuber community.
Took my spot, which is fine. I totally.
You're not an atheist, Steve. Stop trying to be
No,
one. Just-
Steve, you're my favorite in the agnostic community. But Steve,
Thank you.
without Shannon, I don't meet you. That's literally the
had
truth.
to-
I mean, maybe eventually, but I wouldn't have met you were it not for Shannon.
You had to make the separation.
I'm sorry, Mr. Atheist. I didn't mean to do that.
Are you still in the old Nova Scotia there, Shannon, or are you still away?
No, I'm in Nova Scotia.
Cool.
Now that I've buttered you up,
I mean,
go
you're
look at
sitting
my
at the
private
chat of
messages. Now that I've buttered you
So
up,
many-
Shannon, check your DMs on Facebook because I've
Oh,
started to.
that-
Please don't hate me, but
Okay.
wait a second. I think I may. The gist is I kind of feel like just canceling because I could use some time off after this week.
No, don't do that.
Oh my God, no, that would be fine. That's totally fine. Totally fine.
Have you guys noticed though, of all the people I've introduced to the community, which has been several, like hundreds of people, and they're all more popular than I am?
We love you, Steve.
Steve,
It's because you don't believe colors exist.
Steve, people
I just
that
want to know
don't
how to
exist,
do that.
There's a glass ceiling on
Steve-
popularity for people who don't exist. That's just the way
Steve,
it
I'd
don't
like
say
to
you're
knock
not
out.
popular.
How do I become more popular than the people who introduced me? That'd be nice.
Mr. Atheist, I have a
Ooh.
answer for that. It's a little song from the musical Wicked.
Don't summon the player.
I won't. It's too loud. I'll just
sing it
post it
for me,
in.
man.
If anybody's in the live chat who has not subscribed to Mr. Atheist, please go do so. He's at 913 subs, and we gotta get him to 1,000 by this weekend. So
Yeah, that's
would be
one of the.
amazing.
That's
What's in it for
actually.
me?
That's actually
I'll
one of the
stick a link in
rules.
because-
That's
so I
actually
can.
one of the rules. We can't have the player on when we're
Okay.
streaming.
No, wait, do I have
ask
to
me twice to stick it in.
Yeah, I'll just
Do
put
I
it in the
bell or can I
Kevin
just like,
Hangouts chat.
can I just,
Steve,
like,
I might
okay.
not have to ask you twice, but I've
Yeah.
had to yell it at you multiple times to stick it in. Stick it in! Stick it in!
Stick it in. Just put it in, God damn it.
That's right.
Maybe your
Stop making
sex
me
tape.
wait.
How many times you gotta like put it in and put it out and put it in and put it out? It's very confusing. It's like make up your fucking mind.
It'll fit.
Oh my God.
Dirty.
Why do I keep ending up here? I just want to, like that's a question I ask myself consistently. It's like, what am I doing?
Life
I
is
think-
full of grit.
Why
I
the
don't
fuck am I
know.
here?
I think
Because
he just
Shannon-
loves
Who are
us.
these people?
Because Shannon, we're depraved on account of we're deprived.
Oh my god.
That
There's
is
issues in life, yeah.
I thought it was odd that you actually pronounced the same word two different ways.
So
I
so
pronounced
Shannon,
the same word two different ways. What? Hi, everyone.
No,
Hi.
no,
Who's
hi.
talking to
what
me?
was your
Sorry.
assessment of the guest this evening?
It's super that he believes almost any conspiracy that comes across his desk. I guess.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
because
now
Hannah
you're
against
Mr.
flat Earth.
Atheist. What about the other guest?
Sorry, what did I miss? What was just happening? I heard my name and then I was.
I think that he's misrepresenting his the intent of his book. I think he was being purposefully the word I'm looking for here, ambiguous. He was being purposefully ambiguous so that he could allow people to make their own interpretations and inferences on.
Oh, he was dodging like crazy.
Did I convey that? Because I feel like I don't know. For some reason, just because I never got to my point of adrenaline, I'm really like, not to just get all negative now, but I'm like beating myself up because I never got to my normal debate personality where I'm like, no, this is this. So I'm hoping I at least conveyed the point you were just suggesting, Shannon.
No,
Did
dude,
I?
you did definitely kind of highlight that he didn't take a position really. Like you did a good job of that, and I think if you had actually.
The thing I wanted to convey the most, and I hope I did at the beginning and the end, was your book represents it itself as something that you will not now stand behind.
Right.
Well, I mean, I didn't read it, but it sounds to me like it was basically saying, hey, okay, I've got this really great argument, and I'm sure that you'll fully understand it. All you have to do is believe me first, and I'll explain it to you.
He put together a circumstantial argument for something that he could present as plausible and then allowed people to make their own inferences and presented it as though it was information. It was basically a book to convince other people that it had a high probability of being true because he had done so much research.
And I can see that. I didn't read his book, but I definitely have seen that with other books in that kind of format. So
I don't
if
even-
that was the case, it is completely plausible because that is not uncommon with this kind of things.
My joke slash
What's
point
dangerous
about
to
it
know is
being
that he wouldn't pin down that that's what it was. He just kept saying, "Well, I've done this research and I've read these books and look at all my."
Well, I mean, like obviously, like Chariots of Ancient Astronauts and in Search of Ancient Astronauts and Chariots of the Gods, von Däniken style. That was a very similar approach, and yet, but his style of research was bullshit from the get go, right? But that was kind of the narrative that he kind of promoted too. I'm not saying this is the case, but here's out there, and I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. That's how he started off, and then
I mean, he basically said, without saying, and started off by saying, this isn't what I'm saying, even though I'm about to say it. Well, I have a TV show being made, so clearly the information must be good.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that was my favorite.
as
part.
well, said it with a straight face as though the History Channel doesn't exist.
I don't think there's a correlation to the veracity of the truth of the claim, but I mean, it's obviously popular. That's, I think, what maybe he was going for, or maybe he was trying to relate it to the.
But I think that's what he went
verticality of
for
the
with
claim
the whole
as a
book from
problem,
the
because that's
sounds of it.
obviously
I don't think he was trying to convince anybody. I think he was just trying to attract people who already believe this and want to have another book to add to their echo chamber.
I meant it. The joke I made at the beginning wasn't entirely satirical. I kind of meant it when I said this book strikes me mostly as a confirmation bias masturbatory aid, which to me means he's as excited to read it back to himself as his most vigilant fan would be.
It's written for the people that probably have a propensity to believe something like this. Correct? If I had to
Well,
guess.
that's what's dangerous about
Most
it, though. If it's written for
Isn't
people
that
have
most of the people
propensity
that
and
pick
he's
up the
not willing
book?
to just. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Discord's confusing. Like,
The only reason your mic is really, really low right now, Shannon, maybe you can kick up the gain a little bit.
on my phone, I don't know how to pick up.
Can I ask a
on my
question?
phone.
Let Shannon go real quick because she's on the phone, and that's why people are stepping on her. So,
Sorry.
No, it's
Shannon,
okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll mute myself. It's fine. Go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Well, what I was. Why, thank you. What I was going to say was that's what makes it so dangerous, though, is because people that have minds that are easily influenced to those types of scenarios, if he's not willing to just outright say, this is speculative, this is just me saying, hey, I think these things are plausible based on a bunch of previous books that I've read, So that's how I'm presenting it. If he had just done that, I would have had some respect for him. But he was allowing people that he knows are open to that sort of influence to make their own inferences based on something that he's presenting to them, as though, hey, these are some facts I found out about some crazy stuff. Like,
I was disappointed, honestly, Steve, when you came in with the there's no problem with writing the book that way. And maybe it's because I was making the point poorly, but the point I was trying to make wasn't, you can't write a book this way. You can't write a book this way if you present the book as something else and try to hide it. I mean, keep in mind, you said that right after he came in and said, I pointed out the part where he basically set it up for confirmation bias, and that it's obviously got credibility because of its popularity, because of his argument's popularity. And then he said it was a joke. I proved it wasn't a joke, and I don't know.
But you're setting it up. You were setting up from his opening initial thing, and everybody else in the chat was kind of noticing the same thing. They're actually agreeing with Jay on that point. The style, the way he wrote it, doesn't really bother me that much. If that was the case, the way you described it, Mel, maybe that was the issue, because the way you described, the way I inferred, I didn't seem to have a problem with that.
Again, I wasn't criticizing the style. I was criticizing the style as it comes on, or as it worked hand in hand with his representation of the book.
Not the literary style, Steve, but the intention of the authorship, essentially. Like,
that's a different thing altogether.
The book didn't expose anything.
Oh, you fucking want. But I mean, if you have a misleading, dishonest intention that's meant to suck in fucking gullible people and get them to believe stupid things, then yeah, I think there's a problem with writing in that style.
So wait, Steve, did you kind of notice that he actually wouldn't say very much? Like, he would kind of imply things and then sort of just let other people fill in the gaps, because like that kind of seemed to be his MO. So he couldn't get tied down to a position
for some reason, and I don't think Kyle did either. I think he was obviously well read, very informed. I think that there was maybe some ambiguity there on some of his uses of words. I mean, I don't think he did a good job defining how he was using the word cult, to be honest with you. There's many different ways to use that word, and that's one thing that Jimmy did kind of call him out for. And I think Jimmy was right on that the way he was describing it, the way I was listening to, you could kind of use the word cult for anything at that point. It kind of watered it down to be vacuous.
It took a word that was used to have power but gave it a meaningless definition.
I agree with Jimmy on that particular point.
But like, he did that with other things too. He would define, like, he wouldn't define things. When you asked him to clarify a position, he would generally say, well, this is what I don't mean, and then kind of just leave it there.
So let me say,
it needs to be sexy. It needs to be sexy. Okay.
Let me say,
one or the other.
Let me say, as I'm being critical, I think he did a good job, and I may, if this was a debate, I think I lost. If it was a discussion, I think I did fine. It depends on which direction you come in.
Did someone say sexy?
Oh yeah, there's titties in the book.
I invoked Kyle.
Oh, wait! I heard titties.
So
wait a minute. What?
The book has titties in it.
I heard
titties.
Okay, guys, let Shiva ask his question now. He's been trying to ask for half an hour.
Shiva's dying.
I know, you guys keep walking over poor Shiva. Shiva, go ahead.
I've been listening to you since the end of the show. I watched the whole thing, and I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of slightly confused. First of all, I just want to say I enjoyed it very much, and I approached it the same as watching the coin thing yesterday. I knew nothing about both subjects before coming to this video. I thought he handled himself very well, first of all. I'm seeing quite a lot of criticism of him, but I suppose what I'd kind of like to know is, what did you think about what he said?
I liked it.
I thought he was well spoken. I thought he made good arguments. Whether they're true arguments or not, I don't know. I don't know much about the topic. But as an outside person like you who doesn't know much about it, I think he presented a well articulated case. Now, again, I don't find a lot of his conclusions probably right on other things, right? I don't definitely think we went to the moon, and I definitely accept evolution. But I also think that he probably takes these things which we all agree upon, that there are symbolism, and I think that you guys are right. I mean, just like any other good conspiracy person, takes that little anecdotal stuff and combines it all together and tries to make a case for something that just isn't is reality, right? I mean, I don't think there's some big Illuminati conspiracy that Hollywood is trying to promote Satanism or trying to lead people away from God. I don't buy into any of that.
I won't be honest with you. I went into this thinking that it was going to be something completely different than it was, and I thought it was going to be, almost comical, but it didn't wind up being.
He thought it was all going to be about curtains and pentagrams.
Yeah. I was impressed.
Steve, I want to follow up on what you just said, though, because I similarly went, when he's talking, he sounds fine. I actually even kind of enjoy talking. I enjoy talking more than I enjoy reading him, because I do think, and maybe when you, even if you only read the first couple chapters of the book, Steve, check it out, because I want to see if your opinion of the masturbatory style that I think he uses is there. But
gotta keep bringing that up.
That did actually.
Like to say
I do have a question about that as well.
Well, let me finish with my question to Steve, because Steve, you were saying that he was compelling, that he was having that he makes his case well, but I'm still having a hard time knowing what proposition he laid out and supported, because I only was able to hear him talk about all the things that he wasn't proposing.
I think I could lay it out for you in very simple terms.
Okay.
He seemed to be saying that there were a number of conspiracies, and I'm using the word conspiracy in its kind of dictionary sense, to mean people conspiring, nothing, who are for reasons related to faith, perhaps, putting satanic imagery into films. That seemed to be what he was saying.
I think that is the intention of his book. He never, when I tried to get it very much down to what his actual, who's doing this, follow the money, follow the people, I could never get him to actually commit to anything that shows anything more than this imagery does exist. So basically, places I don't disagree. I don't disagree that when you make a film like The Shining, which is one of the ones his book talks about, that you probably purposefully use occult symbology, but the motivation to do so, he failed to identify or to support, except for saying, here's the motivation of other people who have done propaganda stuff in the past, because there are people in common. That was still the motivation maintained later.
I mean, I think what was missing for me was something visual, like some examples of what he was saying.
That's a good point, and I tried to do that. We actually talked earlier, yesterday and earlier today, and he usually, like in the TV thing that he talked about, or he alluded to in the discussion, he lays it out, pretty detailed in that, but he didn't have those actual like images that was used for that accessible where we could kind of incorporate it to what we were doing. But we did try to do that, because I agree with you. I think that would have went a long way in kind of illustrating his point. But you can go to his channel, and there is a video on there that will lay that out for you.
But then you're also talking about things that are purposefully used to be symbolic, and a bunch of people coming in and saying, I think it symbolizes this versus I think it symbolizes this. The whole point of symbolism in art, and I know this because I'm an artist for a living, is to do what appeals to you, but leave it open to interpretation for other people. So I don't know that would have made a better debate, because we would have just been going.
How are you defining symbolism? Because my understanding of symbolism in art is actually quite different, in that you're using images to represent other things.
So I agree that. So for example, here's an example from recent pop culture. This Is America came out by Childish Gambino and became super popular, and everybody is asking, like, did this mean this? Did this mean this? And his actual response is, I don't feel like it's up to me to answer that. In fact, I think that would take away the point. He had his own motivations for it, but you leave lots of things open for interpretation. Otherwise, it actually say that find the book where the people say this is what those symbols meant.
Didn't he actually say that the symbols were prescriptive rather than descriptive? So they weren't referring to something.
He does believe in.
Really pointed point that he was very much believing that symbols have some kind of intrinsic meaning, that they had power of some sort.
He thinks a lot of. So I actually was
But
aware
he's
of this
not
from watching
Christian,
some other
isn't he?
stuff,
So-
and it would be a neat. I think it would have been maybe even a more fun discussion. Again, I'm not trying to disparage, but somebody at some point should have the discussion with him on intrinsic values, because he thinks there's a lot of intrinsic value in a lot of things in the universe, and that's where we get things dictated about objective morality and things of that nature.
Can I ask a question that I kind of wanted to ask, and I don't know if it was addressed in the conversation, or maybe it was in the book. To what end? So placing let's use an Illuminati symbol. You place an Illuminati symbol in a movie or a series of movies. To why? Like, what's the purpose of that? Like, to what end? What does
subliminal
placing
messaging?
those?
I think
The question I was going to ask,
subliminal
right, as
messaging involves an auditory or visual, like subliminal messaging. How?
Yeah.
Like just so that people would recognize the symbol.
Well, yeah, I think his argument is that it resonates somehow with, certain symbols will resonate subconsciously with, like, for example, I looked into this after Jimmy had given me the example yesterday about the pentagrams in the curtain, in The Shining. Just seeing those things, subconsciously affects you somehow, I think.
I suspect, but would be open to correction based on reading his book and the times he references sex magic and things of those nature, sometimes as symbols and sometimes it's seeming to be on the exterior. I suspect he actually believes that the occult are successfully practicing black magic, and therefore there may even be a supernatural level to if you are watching a pentagram on screen because it has intrinsic value and you're capable of black magic, that may be.
But if that were the case, there wouldn't be a requirement to hide them. Simply the presentation of them in any form would have that effect, and they wouldn't need to be hidden.
Hey, my bad. I got a question, Mr. Atheist.
Mm-hmm.
You read the book and I didn't, so I just was wondering about this. Did he go into a lot of that stuff about normalizing the imagery so that it's not visible to the greater public, like a lot of these cats do?
I would say that is an implicit theme, but it isn't directly explicit. I think actually there may be a few parts that were explicit. So here's the thing I have to tell you about reading the book. And I don't mean this in any mean way. You might enjoy it. I didn't enjoy reading it because my brain couldn't get past, in the intro, the presuppositions I was asked to make. So because my brain can't accept those presuppositions, it was hard to see his point of view. There's also a lot of stuff that, and he mentions that a lot of these are essays. I suspect in a number of essays, to get a better grade, he used a thesaurus to improve the vocabulary, because you'll actually see an inconsistent level of how advanced his vocabulary is chapter to chapter. And those sorts of things are things I look for some reason and get stuck on. So I believe it was at least an implicit. If he said it explicitly, it could be there, but I missed it.
What up, everybody? This is Jamie. I just wanted to say the one part about, do you remember when Michael Jackson came out with Thriller? And in the very beginning, he said, due to my strong personal convictions, I wish to stress that this film is in no way endorses a belief in the occult. And then he proceeded to do all these satanic things. I always think about that all the time. Like, maybe human beings just have a fascination with not only being scared or the thriller aspect of that satanic worship, but also the idea that they're like the movie Dogma, where they got off on the fact that they're pissing a lot of people off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, Michael Jackson was a Jehovah's Witness, right?
Right.
No, that was Prince. Was
Michael Jackson as well.
Up too?
He was as well.
Yeah.
Jackson.
So anyways, that's my point. That's all my point was, is you can really obsess about it, but it's kind of comical if the producers and the directors are all sitting behind going, look at all these people we're pissing off.
Well, and you can exploit it to some level too. I mean, I know atheists who won't fuck with Ouija boards.
I've had bad experiences with Ouija boards. A lot of bad experiences.
Even though that's a board game.
Exactly. I mean, it is.
How
it is
can you
nothing
have a
in
bad
it.
experience with a Ouija board?
They're weird.
Because of the Ideomotor response.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
So
Find muscles.
basically, you can test this yourself. I've done this several times with pendulums because I used to do magic, and this used to form one of my routines. If you get someone to do something like hold a pendulum, put their hands on a table, or put their hands on a small glass on a piece of wood with letters arranged around it, and then kind of suggest that certain things will happen, then subconsciously you'll make these really, really, really tiny muscle movements, which kind of dictate the motion of the object. And it's a bit weird that when you get people in groups, the Ideomotor response still seems to work, but you know, stage magicians are a prime example.
Well,
of
yeah.
it working.
So it's a party. It's a party trick. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah,
it is.
it was originally made by the Parker brothers. It was a board game.
So it's not just.
It has an association with the occult.
Yeah,
purely because of the Exorcist.
The interesting thing about what you're talking about with the Ideomotor response, it's not just used with pendulums and Ouija boards and table turning, which are common things that it was used for. It's also used for things like muscle reading and whatnot to be able to move people around the room to locate objects, things like this. I used to do magic as well, so
did I,
I have a bit of a background. But actually, a pendulum can be quite effective to be used even in a therapeutic setting, as long as you're doing it in an honest way. If you're not telling them that it's some sort of a spirit thing, and it's presented as more of a way to tap into unconscious sort of thinking, because there is a bit of a dissociation that occurs, people will accept something in that perspective in a very different way. It's actually an interesting phenomenon that people have used with like 6-step reframing techniques and cognitive behavioral therapy using pendulum.
No, I've actually kind of gotten into a little bit of that myself, and well, into a little bit of a different side of it. I was actually for about 18 years into hypnotherapy as well, which kind of does have a lot of the same connotations as well.
A lot of expectation setting the precedent for what's going to happen. I'm curious to hear what Steve was going to say about his bad experience with I was going to say on Ouija boards. That time you were like totally on Ouija.
We'll have to do that a night where we don't have like 15 people in here because it would just be too long and whatever.
okay.
But I'm just saying that the experiences with the Ouija board could be very, very potent. I mean, just like people like having experiences like on LSD, they claim to have very spiritual type experiences, right? Well, I mean,
so you opened a portal to another dimension, then, right?
Did I say that, Brenda? Did I actually say that? Like, seriously?
I'm making a joke. It's funny.
I thought it was funny.
You want to come and do it on my channel sometime, Steve? We'll have a little discussion about Ouija.
To talk about it.
He might be from another dimension.
You never know.
A dimension entirely made of triangles.
The dimension that doesn't exist.
Where Bernstein is spelled Bernstein.
Oh no, Berenstain. I was actually asked about that not that long ago about the Mandela effect. Yeah.
Hey, if you can't remember something, it's clear that you're from a parallel universe. There is no other explanation.
Memory never fails or anything. But I'm also not suggesting that there's anything paranormal about pendulums. It's just it's hawked that way, right?
Well,
like,
obviously not.
There's definitely an actual science behind ideomotor response. It's quite fascinating when you look at.
I think if this is my fault that I derailed it and that's not cool, I apologize.
Oh, it's the after show. It gets derailed pretty constantly.
Yeah, were there rails?
I'm a professional derailer.
No, the after show goes where it goes.
Cool.
It not only gets derailed, it gets railed too.
Yeah.
That's why we made Walmart.
Yeah, that's where Walmart After Dark comes in.
That's a dimension. That's a dimension that definitely has triangles or some kind of satanic influence. Holy cow!
Rails are just where they want you to go.
Where is Wisdom Vendor? Where is Wisdom Vendor?
We need Wisdom Vendor.
Getting his name, Kyle.
If you are out there,
just like when people say sexy, you show up.
If you're out there, Wisdom Vendor, come on in here.
Are you
Bring
kidding
him.
me? Are you invoking the Wisdom Vendor?
And let's bring Edgar too. What the fuck? Let's get Edgar in here.
Let's just get Edgar and Wisdom Vendor and Debbie and we'll implode the internet.
Somebody's been wrestling emus again today, haven't they?
Nah, not me, mate. We lost that war. I've come to terms with the fact that we went to war with fucking emus and we lost that fucking. We took machine guns and still lost. I don't know how, but we did.
I've never met.
They don't even have arms that work.
I've never met anybody so cool and laid back seeming, but sounds so angry when he's doing it than Red Eye. You're the angriest. You're the angriest chilled out man that I've ever met in my life.
I'm a walking contradiction. I like that.
It's because they run really fast and they just avoid the bullets.
They're neo birds.
They're actually highly trained ninjas. That's the only thing I can put it down to. They're like doing Matrix-like moves, dodging bullets.
That's like that's the best visual I've had in a long time.
I'm pretty sure that the CIA trained them using movies from Hollywood.
When I asked that guy Dell about
CIA trained emus. Ooh.
saying he knew about math, and I'm like, oh, really? And I'm just like, oh, wasn't it Dell, somebody that I was just like, so you know about matrix theory? He's like, I've seen the movie. So I'm like, oh, fuck me. Jesus.
So
man.
wait, you did have shit with Dell before the show started. You questioned his stupidity by accident.
What's excellent though is Dale's name for his last hangout, which is what was it? Steve Mc what was it? Steve Mc it was Steve Mc something and Red's wrecked. But Steve's name was hilarious. Hold on, let me find it. It's
Find it, Kyle. I need to know. Find it right now.
I'm getting it right now.
Spanky.
Steve. I have to.
Still have people messaging me. How did you ever
Steve
find
Steve McCree?
Steve McCree.
Oh, that's going
like,
in the Illuminati chat
how
right
did you
now.
guys find that level of dumbness even among flat earthers? I'm like, that's just a talent.
Well, I mean,
they found us. They found us.
I find it really, really freaking.
Hang on, Kyle. Now, for the record, true or false? Did I have any interaction of any kind with either Dell or Gab prior to that hangout?
No. What happened with that is the day, like that morning, I got an email when I woke up from Gav that said apparently he had found out that Reds and Jim Panda was coming on, and he wasn't happy about that. But I have the emails, and I sent him a copy of the email that he sent to me and Steve and everyone else, where he said, "Bring your best people. We're going to bring ours, and we'll do this." I guess he didn't like that our best people, he knew ahead of time, were going to smoke him. So they were trying to back out. They said that, okay, hold on one second. They said, if you don't take Reds and Jim Panda off this panel, we're not coming on. And I said, that's fine. Don't come on. We'll just tell everybody why you're not on there. And I'll show the emails where you said, bring your best people, and didn't say anything about not inviting, such and such. So when they came on, I guess they figured out that wouldn't look very good for them. So when the moment they came on, they were both just pissed off. And Dale is in his plywood bunker. Steve,
he was triggered.
Before the show started, he smoked, I guarantee you, a half of a pack of cigarettes in that 15 minutes that we
was smoking chain smoking.
And there's nothing more uncomfortable than having him in that shadowy plywood box just glaring at you through the camera. I had to leave. Like I was like, I'm gonna go outside, guys. I'll be right back.
So wait, they said they were gonna send their best, and they sent Dell. Like who did they like behind? Like who didn't they fucking go with?
Congo the monkey from that South American
That's
zoo.
racist as shit.
And it's not racist.
You can't name a monkey Congo from South America.
Oh, that's right. I'm not up to date with the PC culture, I guess.
That's racist.
Why are you running?
For some reason, and I don't know why, but they came in and nobody said anything to them about this. They thought it was supposed to have been them two having a discussion with me. They wanted to go after
you
me.
interrupted, Steve. That's why that's why he got pissed at you. Gav was talking and you said something over top of Gav, and it was on. You just happened to be the first person that made a.
They said that in the message they to you. Something like that. They thought they were talking to me.
Gav was saying that in the email. Gav was saying that you in the previous flat Earth discussion, you said, why don't flat earthers have anybody with a higher education or a PhD? He was saying that he was answering your call for that. Like that was their reasoning for coming on. Like you asked for somebody with a background and, you know, PhD level stuff. He was answering that. But he included in that, bring your best people. He didn't say, you know, I want it to be with just you two or whatever. We just do, you know, we did a 2-on-2 thing. And I think they saw that it was, Jim Panda and Dale have a long history anyway. I mean, you could tell that by the way they were arguing back and forth. So I think when they saw who it was, they didn't want to go that route. So they tried to like hold us hostage by saying, well, we're not coming on if they're coming on. And I was just like, well, fuck it. Don't come on then. We're still going live and doing the show with or without you.
Kyle and I, we're not going to be held hostage by that fucking bullshit.
No.
It ain't going to happen.
Not a
chance.
Hell yeah. Damn the man. Save the empire.
I told you, Steve, though, when it comes to what's going on with Sargon, those people, they may have left for now, but they come at night and they will be back.
Well, let them. Look, they can blow the section up or post whatever the hell they want to. I'm not going to deal with it. He's coming on the show, whether people like it or not. And if they have an issue with hearing a different idea, they can watch something else. It's that simple.
I agree.
All right.
I gotta ask you one quick question.
Who are really like you hear rumors and you see things stirring, and I talk with Sargon a lot, and there are people who are legitimately like trying to shut him down. There are people trying to end him, and
I just unsubbed.
It's pretty because now that he's made this push to do like real world stuff, he's having the meetings and he's packing halls and he's making public appearances and stuff. There are people who are pissed at that. They are legitimately extremely upset that he's out there trying to do real world stuff.
I've seen it.
It's ridiculous.
But Bragg, let me ask you. Hang on one sec, Bragg, if I can ask you. If you're not busy this weekend, off air, this is not going to be an on air, but I've already invited Talk, and I want to kind of catch up on some of the because I don't watch too much Sargon.
Wait, invited who?
Ian.
Yeah.
He was more than happy to come and have a kind of give me a primer on some of the stuff because I want to kind of get up to speed because I haven't been doing much in SJW stuff in quite some time. But from I've seen from Sargon, I'm not, thinking that he doesn't make good points. I think that some things he says I do agree with. Another things I think he's out to lunch, right? But I think he should have a platform. I don't see any reason not to give him a platform. I think he is sensationalized because he wants to be sensationalized. That's his shtick. Whatever.
Well, he's definitely trying to make an impact.
I mean, I kind of found it hypocritical that you have these SJW types that are like, oh yeah, no, we don't have no problem with the pastor that comes on and wants to stone gay people and children, but Sargon, fuck, that's over.
Yeah, they're very selective in their outrage.
Yeah, I don't understand how Sargon could be a bridge too far.
Well, it's because they know that Sargon is and has the capacity to affect the real world in a way that this 22-year-old pastor nobody doesn't. They understand that Sargon has a huge platform, and he has taken what used to be an online-only platform and bringing it to the outside real world.
Yeah, Sargon's close to 1 million people. He's almost close to 1 million subs.
He's filling theaters with people, and he's going out and doing marches and protests, and he's going out and trying to change the world. And at first what they did was they said, oh, that's cringe, or that's stupid, or your liberalist group is dumb, and it's not going to happen. And it gets bigger and bigger, and he goes out and he actually starts doing shit. And now they're like, oh, fuck. Now what?
Yeah.
Now what do we
And
do?
if you have a problem with it, it's just like I said, it's simple. You just don't have to watch the stream. It makes no sense to me to sit there and try to cause a big thing over something that's not. I mean, it's not going to affect how we're going to approach the show in any capacity. So, I mean, either just drop it or don't watch. Simple.
I already had somebody, an SJW person, say, well, you're just having Sargon for the views. And I'm like, I couldn't give a shit about that, to be honest with you. I told Kyle, I don't, it doesn't matter. We go into this. Hang on. We go onto this. You have 1 sub, you have 1 million subs. Who the fuck cares if you've got a good discussion? We will have you on. We will shut down somebody who has 1 million subs just as fast as somebody with 1 sub. I don't give a fuck about that. I mean, yes, it helps to have subs. It helps to have bigger names. Yeah, that's a given. But I've never gone after bigger channels just to have them on because they got bigger channels. Because it doesn't translate. Look, Regs has 300,000 followers. We've gotten 3 subs from the dumbass. So, you know, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it also doesn't actually help.
Right?
So,
I mean, it had nothing to
having
I'll
them
tell
on
you
your
right now,
channel
Steve.
doesn't do as much anyway. As
Oh
people
yeah,
think
it's
it
like
does.
it's Steve. I'll tell you this now because you'll get it more and more, and you'll notice it more and more as you go. You probably already have. You've been around long enough, so you can't do anything right because if you go after smaller channels, then you're punching down, and that's irresponsible, and you're a terrible person. And if you go after channels or associate with channels that are bigger than you, then all you're doing is trying to make noise and get attention and go after big names. So don't even people who, that's why I've been pretty honest from the beginning. I don't care how many subs you have. You can have 10 or 5 or 5 million. I've gone after the big ones. I've gone after the small ones, and with all the repercussions that entails. So you just have to be honest and upfront about all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
you just gotta be like, sub counts do not matter to me. I do not care.
And Matt Dillahunty on, and we treated him just like any other guest.
Yep.
What about his thing about Sargon? It's like there's people in chat now saying Sargon makes obvious points of sex. All right, if you don't agree with what he's got to say, I don't like the fact that they're shutting him down and they're shutting down other places where they go, oh, alt-right, we're not going to allow that, and they're actually shutting places down or costing extra money for security, and then nothing fucking happens. And it's just like, what happened to free speech? The whole spirit of the thing's gone out the fucking window lately, and it's just really...
And look at what's happening with Steam right now.
People are sensitive.
Yeah, I read the Polygon articles, like Steam have
Oh my
just
god,
watched
I'm working on a video on it right now. I had to swap topics. I was doing stuff about another thing, but I had to talk about the Steam stuff. It's exactly what you'd expect it to be, and it's to the point now where...
What is it?
Well, Steam basically came out and they said, here, actually, I've got it up because I'm doing, compiling stuff, but I'll put it in the general chat. There's a link there. Steam came out and said that we're not going to basically pre-censor games for you. As long as it works and it's not a troll product and it's not illegal, then we'll allow it. So we're not going to censor games based off of their political stuff or whether they're offensive or not. They basically said, we don't care if you're offended. If you don't want to buy the game, don't buy the game. We're not going to censor it. If you want to buy the game, then
back down from that one.
Yeah. And so gamers everywhere are like, yay, good. I don't want somebody else telling me that I can and cannot have something. I don't want somebody else dictating, what's available out there. But of course, games journalism and SJWs are reeing all the way to everywhere on Waypoint and Forbes and Polygon and Kotaku and all those meme sites that everyone thinks is a joke. Of course, they're upset because Steam has a responsibility and and free speech is they won't say it, but free speech is bad, and we should allow massive companies to censor things for us, and it's bad that the consumer can now have more freedom on what's available to them.
In all fairness, a lot of the argument about Steam is actually whether, because they don't really curate games, so that somebody could just shove out like shovelware constantly, shit that's not even completed.
That argument has been made, but that's been going on for the last 3-4 years anyway.
I know, and it's bad.
And it's a partially self-correcting thing, because if something is shovelware and garbage, it's honestly hard to not notice it, because there will be reviews and there will be. Yeah, it's very hard. You kind of have to go out of your way to legitimately buy a crappy asset flip shovelware game, but they're out there, and there's a lot of them out there.
And usually anyway, but whatever.
Like, what about bundling like spyware in with a fucking shitty game that you're trying to give to people like that? I don't know. Some degree of quality control seems to be necessary. Well, I don't give a fuck about the game though. Like
I don't see the end of the world and the end of free speech coming from Steam deciding to not carry because isn't this all around the school shooting simulator that you're talking about?
Well, it did bring.
No, it's not just that. Nudity has also been taking a hit too in general.
Nudity's been hard to find on Steam for years.
But it was taken down not because of its content, but because the developer was an asset flipper and a troll, and he would do bad stuff with community posts and things, and they banned him from posting on Steam. But the argument that we see from the Polygons and Kotakus and the soy boys like Jim Sterling and Klepek and all of them what we see is that they try to take this position of we should be the moral arbiters of what is and isn't allowed. You shouldn't be able to put a game because it has objectionable content, and at the same time they'll say Agony is objectionable content and it's misogynist, or God of War is sexist, or this game is bad and that game's bad, and every game is bad. These are the same people who want Steam to take these measures to control, because this isn't about quality control.
Did they
right?
successfully
Quality
get
control
God of
is
War
a separate issue from what they're saying. They want to they want to be the moral police of what you are and are not allowed to have, because they have this fear, because they pull out the ever-present boogeyman.
Wait, I saw more shit like that about Far Cry
Nazi
5
games.
than any
Now
of
we'll
the.
have, well, yeah, Far Cry 5 wouldn't be allowed, right? Because it doesn't depict probably right-leaning gun owners as evil mass murderers. So it sends a bad
No,
message.
but I mean
so it
beforehand,
can be-
people were like,
What was
"Hey,
the,
this is all
what
going
was
to be
the
about."
RPG set in Bohemia?
Yeah, exactly. Kingdom Come Deliverance was a terrible,
Yeah.
racist game because there weren't enough darn darkies in it.
Are you
And so
upset
what
that these
happens-
entities exist that are making these claims, or are you upset that they're succeeding in getting Steam to make any choices? Because I haven't, as far as I know, Far Cry 5 isn't banned from Steam.
Oh, Far Cry 5
Oh.
is the second best-selling game that Ubisoft has ever made after The Division.
It's a good game.
It is pretty good. I liked it. But
No, The
these are
Division sucks.
the same people who tell us that Far Cry 5 is objectionable, and that Kingdom Come Deliverance is objectionable, and Agony is objectionable, and all these games are objectionable, are the exact same ones who want Valve to not sell objectionable games, because everything now is racist or sexist or bigoted or offensive in some way.
Yeah,
what I'm
but I mean,
asking
this
is, does
is
that
just
mean
a
that they're
rehash
succeeding
of
just
the-
because Valve ever does take a game off? I haven't seen a case that there's that massive amounts of success. I certainly don't see that as successful just because the school shooting one got taken down.
The school shooting one it's a non-issue that got propelled into being an issue, because we have games with that stuff coming out all the time. It's just Hatred is a good example. That came out in 2015, and the only
The
reason
Bully
that
got a lot of flack when Rockstar made it, and that didn't even have any school
when
shootings.
Hatred came out in 2015, it was a middling average game that got a lot of sales because it got hyped up and people shone a spotlight on it when it didn't deserve it. But it had controversial content in it, and as a result, it got a lot of sales. Active Shooter was the exact same way, because everyone started to talk about it. At face value, it was obviously not a good game. The way that it looked, the way that it played, it was clearly one of those games that was banking on controversy, and it was put out by a developer who in the past would manipulate Steam reviews and comments, and who would asset flip, and who would do bad stuff. And he has since been banned from posting again on Steam. So we do see that. As for whether or not they're winning, there's a huge, and it's been this way since shortly before Gamergate.
It's been this way since Mortal Kombat to some
between
extent, though,
games
right?
journalism and people who play games. Go to these articles. PC Gamer is a great example. Go to the articles of the game journalists talking about how it's terrible and morally reprehensible that Steam won't censor things for the consumer. And of course, gamers are like, good. I don't want this company to determine what I can and cannot see on Steam. I'm an adult and I have the ability to make purchasing decisions for myself. Don't have somebody else make that decision for me. All the while, gaming journalists think it's the end of the world and this is terrible and horrible, and won't you think of the children? And the pearl clutching that we saw in the far right and in the conservative right is exactly what we're seeing now in the regressive left. It's a complete and total flip on that. Different reasons,
Now,
same effect.
Do you think that there's like a happy medium or something where you just don't show certain titles over a certain rating unless you've already been verified on Steam with a credit card or something where they know you're over 18?
Well, there's no possible way to check people's ages. And when it comes to that, it needs to be, if there are, the think of the children argument doesn't.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, it's been happening since Mortal Kombat came out back in the day, and everybody said,
Well,
"Oh,
yeah, Mortal
make everybody
Kombat
kill
wouldn't be
people."
allowed on Steam today if they didn't do this stuff, because it was objectionable content, and Grand Theft Auto was objectionable content, and Doom, and
Duke Nukem,
And Duke Nukem and all of these games, they wouldn't have been allowed because if you
I'm
let
sure that
somebody censor
Wolfenstein
it-
wouldn't have been allowed because it depicted Nazis. And
I mean,
you
they
know,
got Target to not stock Grand Theft Auto 5 on the shelves. It's one of those things that ultimately it comes down to who do you want to make the decision for what is being bought? Do you want it to be the consumer or do you want it to be a corporation? And you wouldn't expect the left to be the ones to say we should let a massive corporation decide what is and isn't widely available for us to purchase.
Yeah, I know that
as long as
Manhunt
the game is
2.
functional and as long as it's not breaking any rules and it's not false advertising, then tag it properly and let it be out there and let it compete with all the other games and let consumers decide to buy what they want. And if, hey, maybe, and this isn't going to happen, there will of course be meme games pop up, and many of them will probably be absolutely hilarious. But maybe there's a game that's going to come out that's an unironic Hitler simulator. And if you have lots of people buying that, then your problem isn't that there's a Hitler simulator. It's that people are legitimately supportive of a Hitler simulator, and that goes far beyond what games you're playing. And you're not going to get rid of that problem by saying, oh, you can't buy this Nazi game.
So where does your line exist, or do you say there is no line to what should be available on Steam and Steam deciding?
Well, I said it before, but I'll clarify. As long as it's not false advertising, as long as the product is being represented properly on the storefront, as long as it is functional and not like harmful to your computer, and as long as it's not illegal, then I have no problem with it being on the Steam storefront.
So things that are sourced in fetishization that are not okay, that we've culturally said are not okay, things like rape, a simulator that allows you to go and rape people, that's up to you whether you're going to buy. We shouldn't be the moral arbiters to decide.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a perfect conversation. I'm watching Westworld this week, and this is what happens with the androids there.
Yeah, I just disagree. I think there is a line.
How could you? I don't at all. Do you think we should pull Grand Theft Auto off the shelves?
Oh no.
Okay, why is Grand Theft Auto allowed? But how come murder is okay but rape isn't?
We haven't proved a fetishization link.
Yeah,
dude, murder can be.
Hang on. I look at it this way. By the way, no spoilers for Westworld. I'm going to binge watch it after the last episode, so don't fuck with me here, people.
Rosebud's the sled.
Great show. I can't hear you. But when it comes to things like games, I am sorry, but I believe very strongly that games are morally inert. You have no moral obligation in playing a game. If you want to rape something, you want to fucking kill something, whatever. I don't give a fuck what you do in a simulation. Makes no difference to me.
And I would say to Mr. Atheist that we actually know that the sexualization and objectification of women in video games actually is correlated to greater respect for women. This was
that's hardly a point about in response to what I was asking about a specifically driven rape simulator. What about a pedophilia simulator? No line there either.
They do that in their own private thing. I don't give a fuck. As long as they don't fucking do it to a real child, I'd rather have them doing that.
Well, and that's my point.
As long as it's not illegal, I have no issue with it. I have no issue with it.
I'm pretty sure that a pedophilia simulator would be illegal because it's illegal to depict minors in sexual situations.
Yeah, so that would fall under the illegality.
Okay, rape is illegal.
Yeah, rape's illegal too, right?
Yeah, but it's not illegal
murder,
to
so
depict
ban
it.
Grand Theft Auto.
It's not illegal to depict it in a movie. It's not illegal to
So
write about
then should it be illegal to depict in a simulation?
Should it be illegal to depict in a movie?
No, pedophilia right now. We're talking about a simulation.
I don't think anything should be illegal to depict. I think that censoring an artist in any situation or medium is negative for society's progression.
Wait, there's a difference
even if it's something that disgusting.
Hang on. There's a difference between depicting and disseminating. If you are a program and you made a child sex simulator for your own thing, I couldn't give a rat's ass, right? Now, if you disseminate that over a medium, then yes, that would be illegal and should be, very much so.
I think, the argument we're having is whether it should be illegal to disseminate it. And I'm saying it should be illegal too.
I don't think actually filming little kids could be considered art.
Art is so subjective.
I think that's
abuse. If you're going to creates harm, if there's no way to show that it does any kind of harm, then I I take Steve's position on it's morally inert.
I mean,
I don't see why it would be an issue. I
If
mean,
you issue a game that
we're
is a
fine with
pedophilia simulator, who are you targeting?
All right, maybe,
pedophiles.
Maybe that
Exactly.
gives the pedophiles an outlet so that they don't actually go and do it in real life. I mean,
Yeah.
What about
simulating?
see that study?
So who's the
What
victim
about-
other than your sensibilities?
What about simulating to the point where you can actually pay to have somebody develop the character to look like somebody that's actually in your life, without their knowledge?
they're still not a real person in the game. Like
Yeah,
they're not that
I would
physical
wonder who the
person.
victim is.
Beaton, I got a question for you. Have you ever like looked at porn and then not wanted to enact, maybe not enact that specific scene, but then you wanted to go and physically like finish yourself?
I wouldn't know how to do half the shit I've seen in porn.
I've looked at porn in situations that I would never go do in real life, and it tickled my fancy.
By the way,
But
they
I
actually have shown links to children watching porn and the actions that they are taking early on. That it's now popular for 14-year-olds to take photos of their faces covered in cum, and that they are acting out pornography. So it's.
But that's different. That's children.
I think
I'm an adult.
Yeah,
If
I'm not
they- if
gonna.
they wanna
I'm not
do
gonna
that, I mean,
dictate
go
the
for it.
behavior. I'm not gonna say that Valve needs to dictate what I can and cannot buy because there might be kids out there who get a hold of it.
And I'm just going to maintain the position that in a marketing situation, preventing a market from appealing to pedophiles and rapists, I'm fine with.
Yeah, I'm on that boat too.
I know I'm a hero saying let's not encourage rapists and pedophiles. What a difficult position that is to take. But I just, man.
No,
the
like,
lines-
here-
All
the
right,
lines-
here's the thing, though, right?
Let's,
I mean,
ban, let's ban
That's-
Grand
that's
Theft
not a
Auto
position,
because it
though.
encourages murderers.
And
But again, the depiction of children is a separate.
It's already
thing altogether,
illegal.
because
It's
it is
already
already illegal, right? And so I would have to probably say that I would be against that. That's why I made a
And I
distinction
would
between somebody who
agree
made
with
their
that
own
too, but-
program and somebody who disseminated a program of that like.
And not only what's interesting too is that within the furry community, right? I know a lot of big name artists and stuff, and I got dragged into it. So within furry communities, there is a big pushback against cub art, which is the depiction of minors, right? So
Yeah.
even in those circles, there is it's this. I don't know how to really describe it. Like even within that degeneracy, there's tiers of it. You know, it's
Well,
the
I mean-
honor among thieves kind of deal.
one of the interesting, like if you look at like stats and whatnot, because we have a lot of stats thanks to things like Pornhub and whatnot that correlate a lot of this stuff, but like for habits and different, but all the most fucked up porn really comes out of Japan, and they also have the lowest rates of sex crimes. Now, part of that could be a reporting issue, but even if it's off by whatever fact, they have the lowest rate of sex crime period, as far as I'm aware.
To get back to the individual who made the let's ban Grand Theft Auto because it causes murder.
I didn't say that.
or not causes murder, that it simulates murder.
No, I didn't
that
say
to
that.
me is no more. Okay, go ahead, restate it.
So we should ban Grand Theft Auto because it appeals to potential murderers.
Okay, it's the exact same level of argument as the people who, when people ask for gun control, will say, yeah, we should ban knives too, because we all agree there is a line, but the line should be somewhere. Actually, I guess a few people in here said there is no line. However, there is a difference between, first of all, it's not marketed as a murder simulator. I wouldn't want something that has a byproduct of rape or pedophilia in it either. But there is a big difference, and we all believe there is a line, and so we have to, as a society, decide where the line is. Now, I agree with the idea that we should not give undue influence to the people who have the loudest voices on it, even though they may not represent the majority. But the concept that simply rape and pedophilia games shouldn't be banned because we don't ban Grand Theft Auto for being a murder game is the
But who decides that line though? Who decides where the line is?
Why can't I decide my own line, please?
Yeah, but if you have somebody, if you have to choose, if it comes down to choosing where that line is as a society, who in that society is going to choose, and how are you going to?
Well, it should not be any individual. It should be
Well, in
something-
Australia, let me jump in real quick. In Australia, there was, for a very long time, there was one man had the power over the rating systems of video games, and he used to take great pleasure in saying, I'm not going to allow an R ratings in video games. When that asshole eventually, guess what we got real quick? And he ended up getting death threats at his house and shit. Like, people were just getting the shits. One single person in Australia cock-blocked an R rating for fucking years. It was ridiculous. So
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
And that's actually what I was specifically, I think, going to talk about there, Red Eye, is this happened with Manhunt 2 when Rockstar released it. It got a whole bunch of media hype for how violent it was. It was almost entirely banned. I do believe it was banned in Australia and a few other places. I'm not sure if it was in Australia, but I think it was.
It was Australia and Germany.
Yeah, and even when it did get released, they had to release a heavily censored version of the game because people did say it was trying to be a murder simulator, right? So, I mean, it's not that it's not an issue with everything. It is an issue. There's an issue with people and censorship and conflating things. And guess what? People who played that game didn't go out and murder people in the same way that somebody plays some game that has some kind of sexual content that you may find objectionable. And I'm on board with keeping pedophiles out of things and whatnot. But as far as depictions, because there's difference between a simulator and a depiction too. You could have a rape in a story, and it's part of the actual story, right? There's been movies
That's
that
obviously different than press B to thrust and press X to choke her. I mean, that's not. These aren't equivalent.
Maybe so. But where do you like? Who's in charge of deciding where that line is too? Right.
I'm really tired of from Republicans and arguments in general. Just because the conversation is complicated doesn't mean we should just throw our hands up and go, let everyone individually decide. This is again so synonymous.
He's not, but he was asking a question. Who decides that
That's
line?
not a dismissal of the argument. That's saying that consumers should decide for themselves what's appropriate for them.
I gotta tell, I would err more on the side of let the consumer decide. more than anything
Absolutely.
else. Yeah, I mean, look at it.
Like that's the side I would err on.
Yeah, hang on. Let me finish, please. If there is a pushback and society doesn't want certain games, guess what? They won't buy them, and guess what? They won't be made.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that that's the thing is if you're looking at where are these games, who's going to make them, and who's going to buy them, and for any of these to be made to any level of quality, they're going to need a big budget, and to get that budget recovered, they're going to need a big audience, and I don't think that audience exists. And that's why I don't think you really see this being made.
Whether something is marketable wouldn't imply whether it is in any way possibly wholesome for consumers, those who would consume it.
Who's to decide what wholesome is?
Yeah, I'll decide what's wholesome for me.
Okay, well, enjoy your rape and pedophilia fucking simulators. I'm not.
No, you know what? I don't think that what you're saying is fair.
Yeah, I don't think
not at all.
Yeah,
you don't get to be the moral arbiter of the games I play. Sorry, man.
I don't want to be the individual moral arbiter. I want society to have a conversation about it as a whole, as we do with lots of things.
It sounds like you just passed a judgment on us and saying enjoy your rape simulator. That was a bit harsh.
Fine. Sorry. Enjoy them being in society if that is the way, not you actually playing them. I apologize.
The thing is, though, you have to understand here that ultimately you can't hold back the rights of the majority of the masses for the off chance that somehow, some way down the road, maybe eventually you might get a rape simulator. I mean, that is
actually one does exist.
Well, no, I think those already exist in Japan and shit. But like pedophilia, if you actually there's actually studies like porn. Like if pedophilias jack off to like pedophilic porn, they're way more likely to actually rape children. So at the very least, I think we should shove that one out the fucking window. I'm just gonna leave that there.
I mean, what is the common strand that when a pedophile gets raided, it's always, and we found a bunch of kiddie porn on the scene. It does.
But that does not prove the correlation that because it's not saying they went and looked at porn and then raped the kid. It does not mean that happened. Most people
I would have to
who
say
end up raping children were raped.
Why people get raided for kiddie porn that haven't raped kids, right?
Well, I'd love to see the statistics that said most people who rape children were raped.
I'm not saying most. I'm just saying it's not.
It wasn't you, David. It was the guy before you.
Link.
I'm curious what percentage of adult rapists have looked at porn in their lives too.
Whether it was just
from a
porn in
psych-
general
can I-
wouldn't matter.
Oh my
What
God.
Hey
not
guys,
the
can we
consent.
let Shannon talk, please?
Yeah.
I've been super passively, quietly listening, but you're speaking about something that has some psychological affect, and I can speak a little bit towards why it is that when pedophiles, for example, or rapists have porn that kind of lives out their fantasies, you find that, and it can in some ways lead to it, and it has to do with diminishing returns and stimulation. So you go to a pornographic site, let's say, so that you can kind of live out that fantasy. Eventually that's no longer satiating, so you have to seek out new forms of stimulation. Now that's not always the case, however that is the case when there's other contributing factors, obviously, that lead and mitigate towards that type of behavior, but that is a factor that shouldn't be dismissed.
Sure, but you're going to do it anyway. It is ultimately, like, if you're somebody that has a tendency to be a pedophile, eventually you're going to get to that step. I mean,
not necessarily, not eventually. Like, people could have pedophilic tendencies and never act them out their whole entire life. Like that, people can be born.
I'm so glad you said that, Shannon.
That just because somebody has the innate tendency towards some sort of affect, that does not mean that they will ever enact or instantiate that. Like, you could have homosexual tendencies for your entire life and never have a homosexual partner for a multitude of reasons,
I can
right?
speak on this. Here, let's bring the homosexual expert in.
Hello. Yes, fair enough. Hi. But I mean, look at somebody like, bless her heart, Jade has just passed away, right? She had reasons. She admitted to having homosexual tendencies, but had never acted on them for religious reasons, right? So she had justification in her mind for not acting on those. So that's evidence, to my mind, that you can have a psychological affect that's innate and not act it out. So people could have pedophilic tendencies and never act them out. If they're stimulation seeking, however, then they want to entertain the idea of themselves doing it in their mind to stimulate themselves. That's evidence that they're more likely to enact it. It's not because of that.
Can I ask you a question,
But
Shannon?
that's a symptom of anyway. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this: if let's say that somebody who is in the category of someone that has that that feeling, if they're a pedophile, but they're never going to act on it, would the introduction of a simulator like we're talking about, if that existed, would they seek that out, do you think, or would they still stand by their they're not going to get involved in a situation that could exacerbate their feelings?
Well, we're talking about two very different things. So somebody could, let's say, in the same scenario, somebody could never in real life go seek out a child, right, in their life, but could have consumed pornography. So there's other factors that you need to consider. Does this put them in a scenario where they're more liable to have the inclination that they're going to want to do it? Does it no longer become satiating? The argument would be that if it is continuing to be a satiating factor, then it's preventing them from being compelled to act on their inclination. If it's no longer satiating, then it's going to elicit the desire in them to act it out. Now, both of those scenarios are plausible. Mm-hmm. However, the existence of it, the very existence of it, increases the probability, to my mind, that if they have access to that and it no longer becomes satiating, then they're able to. It has the interactive component allows you to engage more of your prefrontal cortex, right? It allows you to engage in the scenario in a way that passively observing other people can't. So it can increase the efficacy of the fantasy. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well enough? I'm not really arguing for or against, but I think that these are important considerations when you're going in, rather than just saying people are going to do it anyway, because no, they're not. These are mitigating factors that need to be considered in a measured manner, not just saying things.
I've also heard the argument made that if such things were allowed to be available and people were arbitrating them on their own, but it wasn't kind of relegated to an underground area, that you would also have an early indicator for people with these sorts of inclinations that could be monitored.
Well, if it was publicly available, it would still be There's people, the public perception of pedophilia.
No,
isn't
I'm
going
not.
to
I'm not
change,
actually
even if
talking
it's
about
available.
actual child pornography either. Just to be clear, but
You're talking about a simulator, like a CGI simulator,
Yeah.
right? Sure. So the public perception of pedophilia isn't going to change. Just because something's publicly available doesn't mean it's going to be consumed. Are you going to walk into, let's say that you had pedophilic inclinations, are you going to walk into the store and be like, I'd like to buy the brand new child molestation suit, please? No, you're fucking not, because unless you're really fucked, right?
Yeah, but if it's on Steam, anyone could download that shit without talking to a human being.
But is there a level of anonymity that they feel like
there's a record of
right?
it being
That's
bought
connected
and
to
there's
your credit
payments,
card,
information.
presumably, right?
Yeah. They
So
know who
there's-
you are when you buy things. It's like
And you can go look at anyone's profile and see what games they've bought.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's publicly attainable information that can be tracked back to you. These are things that people take into consideration.
Steam will have access to it. So that they would have to put in some kind of like information to buy it, as if you were buying something from Amazon.
But it could be subpoenaed if somebody was interested in you.
I don't think that's going to prevent anyone from buying, because we already know statistical data on things like the people who watch rape porn on regular porn sites and hentai porn sites, and that,
or those child-sized real dolls.
Fantasy.
It doesn't seem to have stemmed the popularity of those in any way, just because technically that information can be tracked to your browser and IP address.
Yeah, but I mean, see, the other side of it that becomes...
People who are going to kill are just going to kill. So why do we have laws against killing?
Nobody's saying
why should? But that's exactly what you're saying.
No, it's
people
not.
are going to do what.
Don't tell us exactly.
Tell me how it's different. Tell me how it's different. Tell me how it's different. Tell me how it's different.
I think
because
tell me how it's different.
The behavior that we're talking about, there's still laws.
Nobody can do it.
Tell me how it's different.
Okay, Brenda, you're going to have to stop talking for them to tell you how it's different. And I, as someone who disagreed with them, can tell you nobody here was advocating for the actual legalization of actual pedophilia. Just some people were saying we shouldn't be putting lines down on whether or not we would sell pedophilia simulators, which is distinctly different.
Yeah, I'm definitely not advocating even for selling the simulators. It's an interesting question as to where you draw moral lines, because you also have issues in Europe right now where they've gone ahead and banned most sorts of porn. You can't even wear a pair of fuzzy handcuffs in a porn video now because it's considered
What about Oculus? What about an Oculus
or something? It's there is, in certain situations, somewhat of a slippery slope argument to be made, where if you have a group that has the power to arbitrate what's considered decent and not, and as power changes hands, but the ability to do so is still there, then suddenly somebody with a sweep of a pen says, "Okay, all this stuff is now illegal." Right?
I think we are capable as a society of establishing a baseline that we mostly can all agree on, except for
tell that to Europe.
What about
Jimmy? Would you support a simulator that involves simulated sex with me?
I've already designed the simulator that simulates.
He's like, I already wrote that shit.
That's the line.
What about
That
an
is
Oculus?
with me. It's a line. Do not cross that fucking line, people.
That's right.
What about an Oculus Rift? What about an Oculus Rift set up with a electronic dildo simulator and simulates child porn? What about that? Is that a line? What about Oculus?
I mean, that's the same thing
adding
as the
tactile
simulator.
simulation to the same scenario. That's all you're doing. You're just adding tactile simulation, automated to the same scenario. I feel like the scenario.
What about a Westworld situation where you have real live robots? They're not alive, they're not conscious, but you can do anything.
I honestly think that would prevent some sex crimes.
Yeah,
would it?
Probably would, actually.
Would it?
Cherry
If you couldn't tell the difference, why would some people do it for power and want to overpower a person? I get that. But if that is not the case with an individual, I think that having that outlet, that indiscernible from reality outlet, would prevent
what does
them.
the science say instead of what you think it would happen?
Well, I can say that.
I don't have any statistics to pull out for this, so
I can say at least this much. There is a distinction between a pedophile who is going to overpower a child because they're into some sort of a power dynamic exchange sort of scenario, and they're doing it for control reasons, and one who has an unhealthy fixation or attraction to younger aged people or younger bodied people that might not have anything to do with power dynamics or control. So depending on where that actual fixation is stemming from, what you're talking about could actually...
Does anybody here actually know anything about sex and human psychology and have actual facts?
What's sex?
Actual facts? No, actual sex therapist or actual psychological facts.
Brenda, this is Jamie.
Are you going to keep
I
talking?
do actually.
Do you know Brenda? Well, I was not done finishing
Brenda, this
sentences.
is Jamie. I was gonna answer you real quick. I did a project with
I was
Cornell
not
University.
done talking. I was in the middle of a sentence.
Jesus Christ.
I was in the middle of a sentence.
Jesus, go ahead.
What
Jamie.
the fuck is your...
Okay, get the fuck out. I'm done. Brenda, you're done.
I worked on a...
Bye-bye. See ya.
Bye-bye.
I worked on a project.
Wait, hang on. She's already on tight leash because she's a known sniper, and she's not allowed in the Great Debate community for that very reason. And so she's already on a very short leash, and even the live chat going, "Oh fuck, Brenda's here." I made it very clear that she derails every hangout that I've ever seen. She adds nothing to her conversation. She's on a short leash. She's not welcome to me as far as I'm concerned. So
cool. Bye, Brenda. Go ahead, Jamie.
All right, yeah, that was unexpected or expected. No, I worked with Cornell University on a residential childcare project that we did. This was around the time when that Manhunt game, I believe, first came out, where you could use your nunchuck controllers or whatever to simulate strangling somebody with a plastic bag. And the psychologists that were on that team, what they determined in their study, and this is some years ago, but I thought it was an interesting principle. There's 2 points. One is that children grow up with back in the Atari days and early NES days, where you're Mario and you jump on a turtle and you kill it, and then when your character falls out of a cliff or gets shot, you die. And so there's this whole desensitization to death and killing from the very beginning of video game playing to the point where Grand Theft Auto, it's like, okay, I can shoot them with a gun, or Call of Duty or anything like that. It's not personal space. And what they saw was a correlation where as the crime became closer and closer and closer to a person's personal space, like strangling via a plastic bag versus shooting with an AR-15, that parents started having an uproar on it. Like, okay, this game needs to be banned, or this game needs to be rated more heavily. And the same thing with rape. And it's like the idea that you're doing a crime that involves personal space, infiltrating that. And the second point that they came up with was when you look at, everyone realizes that they're going to die. Death is assumed as part of life, but not everybody believes that they're going to be raped. And so there was this neat, interesting correlation, because the kids that they dealt with it was a specialized unit where it was kids who were severely molested when they were infants to the age of 8. And they were studying them at the age of 13 now. So it was a lot of that regression therapy and pulling that out. And again, I'm not qualified to do it, but I took part in it for another reason, which was to train the staff that was going to work with those children on how to interact with them. But the interesting part of the study was they were seeing how children who haven't been molested had a natural understanding that that's not something that should occur. But the kids that had been molested, it was like, yeah, that's what you do. So when they were subjected to video games, they had that level of violence. It was like they were just numb to it, completely numb to it. Like, yeah, that's just rape. That's what you do. So I just thought that was interesting from the psychological aspect. And Shannon, you probably know more about this than even I would with my limited experience. But it was just that you're desensitized to death. So society seems to accept murder over rape for that main reason. And two, it's the proximity effect. How much of it is personally invading you. Okay.
Would they have been desensitized because of their previous lived experience, or because of their exposure to the video game, though?
Well, those are two separate points. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we all agree at least that the line should certainly be that no one can buy a Brenda simulator?
Oh,
that is the line, yeah.
Well, I don't know about that. I walked into this and it was free.
Religious.
Hey, can I
Brenda, yeah. They're like, thank you, there's a God.
Can I comment on what you're saying about desensitization? See, there's this game called Soldier of Fortune 2, and like, you can really, really fuck people up physically, and I mean, you could just melt their body with bullets in
It was an awesome
gratuitous ways, and I love it. It's such a fun game. But if I ever see like an actual picture of somebody brutalized like that in real life, it breaks my heart.
That game
into
came out
1,000 pieces.
2002.
Yeah, I'm not. The study was not saying that the desensitization was to you as a person being able to murder. The desensitization was, well, we can accept murder as a good form of simulation. Like that's okay. Obviously, movies are fake. We can, movies are great when you're, Die Hard. Come on, as many deaths as possible. Total Recall. Let's put a pile of bodies up. So it was the idea that we're just desensitized to death in general. So when we're exposed to it visually through simulation, it doesn't really affect us. But when it comes to rape or extreme, like you're saying, you see photos of a murder that had already taken place. You're not even watching one happen in real life. I mean, it's real in the sense that it happened, but you're not witnessing it in real life. And you see that, and it bothers you, because at the personal level, the proximity is closer, both emotionally and physically.
Right.
That makes sense, though. That makes absolute sense. Like, it could also be by virtue of exposure level too. Like we're not subjected to, well, not subjected, that maybe is poor choice of words, but we're not privy to as many forms of media or video games that depict rapes, for example. So we wouldn't have the opportunity to be desensitized to it like we are murder. We see murders on TV, we see murders in video games, so it's easy to become desensitized and like disconnect yourself from it and know that it's not a reality and not be have as much emotional effect on you as something like rape would be, because you're not subjected to that imagery as consistently. So
Steve?
it's still surprising.
I think I know what you're talking about, but I kind of got interrupted while you were explaining the thing. But yeah, I think I know what you were talking about.
Steve? The games I usually prefer are games where space exploration is a big thing, like Kerbal Space Program and such. I'm more of the scientific aspect of gamer myself.
God, Kerbal Space
Yeah, well,
Program.
before you know it, you'll be out there doing
That's a good
science
game.
in the real world.
Because gravity's not a thing. No, I like the 4X type games, right? I do really the ones that are space especially, but I can't get into games like Eve online because it's just too advanced, too much for me to really spend time learning that game. But my first game was like one of the first ones I ever played was called Starflight.
Where is this?
It's brilliant.
Where is
What
this
about Wing
broadcast?
Commander?
Or is it?
Broadcast on the Great Debate Community Channel.
Okay.
Hey, Steve, have you ever played the Wing Commander series?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Classic.
Yes.
Sure.
Excellent.
Oh, look who's back.
I also like SETI Alpha and Sid Meier games.
Yeah, I like Tau City Alpha.
Elite Dangerous is pretty good. I don't know if anyone's played Elite Dangerous, but I've been getting into a bit of that, and it's not bad. Like the way the galaxy's laid out, all the traveling and the different planets and shit. It's pretty
I'm
cool.
mute her to see if
I
she's
heard it
gonna,
was
like,
alright,
wait.
Fred.
Should I? Hang on, Max. Should I unmute her and see if she's going to be a screaming banshee or if she's going to have a civil conversation? I've given her so many chances, and at this point, it's just like I'm just tired of it.
I'm not interested in listening to somebody who repeats the same sentence over and over, and then when the fifth time they're interrupted in the middle, complains about, we had already heard the sentence we interrupted her from saying. So
she is the weakest link. Goodbye.
I got a question though about
I like that. I get that reference.
Wow, the weakest link reference, you got that? Wow, because it's so subtle, and no one knows that. No one's ever heard of that. That was. Ooh.
I'm glad that you're culturally like.
The force is with you.
And on this note, I think I'm going to end the stream. This is a good stopping place.
Wait, before we end it, real quick, I want to get this on record because I don't know who it was, and I want to thank them properly because I don't remember if it was Jimmy or Eric that said this, but whoever recommended to me the show Buddy, you're a good man because that show was fucking hilarious. Buddy,
You mean Barry?
Was Barry? Yeah.
I recommended Barry. So if there's a show called
Yeah,
Bunny, I'll watch it.
Show's great. I don't
Yeah,
know
there's
what it is.
Barry, yeah, the Hitman guy.
Yeah,
By
Barry.
the way, Steve, my condolences to you.
Series, I binged watched it. I want more. I thought that was fucking innovative, genius, funny. It was good. It was really
it's like
really
a
good.
weird macabre comedy Dexter kind of thing.
I will tell you
Yeah.
after I
Dude,
watched it, I
that's what I
went and I
thought,
murdered a
exactly.
bunch of
Dude,
people.
speaking of good shows, have y'all seen Happy?
Oh, Happy's
Yes,
fantastic.
and that is
Hey,
fucking
Before the
awesome.
stream ends,
another one I
can
gotta
I
binge
ask
watch,
Shannon a
goddammit.
question?
Go watch
Yeah, no,
Happy,
Steve, Happy is amazing. It's
I'll trust you guys.
it's based on a Graham Chapman graphic novel. It's
So,
Graham
yes,
Chapman.
Steve.
so
Watch
happy,
it.
happy and Barry.
Wait, can I just-
recommended. All right, got it.
Yeah.
I want to ask Shannon a question.
So you heard it here first. Watch Happy and Barry. That's the conclusion of this stream. And Brenda's kind of being a bitch tonight. Thank you for watching the Hidden Hollywood Satan Symbols in Movies after show. In other words, what the fuck did we just watch? And you guys have a good evening.